Hello, and thank you once again for joining me on this journey as I convert this VW Crafter medium wheelbase 21 plate into a camper van. In this video, I'm going to be connecting up a fuel line onto the diesel tank so we can connect up a diesel heater. Now there is already a draw-off point, that's a connection point that we can connect onto, and all we need to do is to drop the tank and connect onto it. Now this connection point is only on the VW Crafters 2017 onwards on the MAN tags and also on the Grand Californias. Now if you know of any other vans which have this connection, then let everybody know in the comments below. Now I've never done this before, but I filmed the whole process so you'll know exactly what to do. Now it was all pretty straightforward and it went exactly to plan, but there are a few tricky bits you just need to watch out for, and I'll highlight those in the video. Now, I've seen quite a few videos where people have removed the entire tank and then made that connection, and then they put it all back again, disconnecting all the fuel line and everything. There's definitely no need to do that. You can literally just drop the tank down at one end. You can then make that connection and then put it back in place, which is definitely way easier than taking the entire tank out. Now, I'm installing a TRUMA Combi Boiler into this van. In fact, I've already done it. It's up and running, so I know all the connections are fine. And there it is over there. And like I said, it's all up and running now. But obviously, if you're fitting any type of diesel heater, this connection allows you to, well, just connect it up. Nice and simple. So this video should definitely help you. If you're like me, you're just wondering what you're going to find. If it does help you out, then obviously, please give me a little bit of feedback by clicking on the old thumbs up. Click on that subscribe. And obviously, your support is really appreciated. And of course, if you can share it with all the other van folks, hopefully that will help them out as well. Now this video has two halves. The first half is all about making that connection onto the tank and what you need to do to get that done. And in the second half, I'm going to be installing the TRUMA pump and the electrical connection, obviously the cable, and obviously the fuel tube, which runs around to the TRUMA heater. And like I said, the TRUMA heater is now all up and running, and it only took 2 attempts for it to start running absolutely fine. And apparently that's really good. So I'm really happy with that. And now we have hot water and heating. And whilst it's still a bit chilly, that heater can come in really handy. And of course, if you want to know more about the TRUMA install, what I had to do, what's needed and everything, obviously check out the other videos, and I'll leave those all linked in the description below. Just before I get on with the video, if you've got any questions or you've seen anything which I've done in the van you'd like to know a little bit more about, just leave a little message in the comments below and I'll get back to you. Now, obviously, I've filmed the entire process of building this van so far. The videos are coming, but obviously building the van is more important to me to get it done before the spring so we can get out on the road and using our van. But I have filmed everything in detail, so all these videos will be coming in time. So let's dive straight into it and go underneath the van. Now here is our fuel tank, and the fuel tank is just held in with these 6 bolts. So you've got one here, and you've got one at the front here, and you've got one at the back. And these are just straps which literally just go around and just hold the tank in place. So all we need to do is to undo these 6 bolts and the tank will just drop down. Now I'm going to use my trolley jack and use a couple of bits of wood to support the tank as I lower it down. I'm not sure how much diesel is in the tank. I think it's about a quarter of a tank, but I'm not planning on taking that diesel out. I thought also just mention I've jacked the van up and I got it on some axle stands. I got these from Halfords. They're about 30 quid, and obviously that gives me much more space underneath the van. So now I've got a trolley jack. Now I also bought this from Halfords, but you can get a much cheaper one from Euro Car Parts, so maybe check those out. But anyway, it's been really useful for jacking things up. So I've got a couple of bits of wood on there just to spread the load. Now I can just loosen these off. Socket. It's a 13mm socket. I've got a bit of plastic here. Helps me just slide in underneath the van here. That's my regular drill. Nothing crazy has happened yet. Now I saw a video where someone said they just undid the straps on one side and then you could drop the tank down from there and get to it. But I wasn't happy with that, so I abandoned that idea. So instead I removed the other 3 bolts on the other side. So now there's just that one bolt in the middle there. So now I'm going to have to remove my waste tank, which I've kind of permanently fitted. So that's a little annoying, but I didn't know what I was going to have to do when it came to connecting the fuel line. But it's only 4 nuts and undo the waste connection. So now I've just dropped out my waste tank here. And now we can see the fuel tank is here. That's kind of loose there now. I moved the jack now more towards the front. And now we're going to remove that 1 bolt, which is on the middle strap there. Now after a little bit more messing around, I've now moved the jack quite a long way forwards, and I've dropped the tank as far as it would go without having to remove any connections. So you can see that fuel filler pipe, and there's some other connections at the front there. They're all still on the fuel tank. And there's a connection point which we're trying to get to right there. So now I'm looking straight down the tank from the top, and you can see all the tubes kind of go along the top of the tank there. They're sort of held in with various clips. Dropping a tank down like this means you don't have to disconnect any of those pipes or clips all the way down the tank there. So here's a first look after dropping the tank down a bit, and there's that kind of nipple thing which we're trying to get to. You can see it's got like a blue line on it, so I'm just going to clean that off now and check what size it is. Also, if you're going to drop your tank down like this, just watch out for this cable here. Make sure that it doesn't get strained. So I've just measured the diameter of our connection point, and it's a fraction under 8mm. Now the fuel line which came with the TRUMA heater, that was 5mm in diameter. You can see it says there on the tube. Now I've got no idea how this is going to go. Obviously I've not done this before. So let's just see if we can trim off. Now how much do I need to trim off? Because you can see there's like a little nipple there. Do I just cut that top bit off? Or do I cut further down? Let's try and find out. I want to see how hard this stuff is. I'm just going to cut that very top part off first of all and see how that comes out. Because I want to see how soft this plastic is. Actually, that's quite soft. So I think we can go a little bit further down for sure. And the question is, how far down do we go? I thought I just mentioned I've now cleaned it off with a little bit of alcohol. It was all covered with dust and grime, so now it's nice and clean because obviously we need it nice and clean to put on the elbow. Come from that angle there. Yeah, that's a bit better. I can see it a bit better even. Okay, so we're going to have to... I've got a hole in it. That feels a little bit more brittle than I wanted it to be. Ooh, it's tricky. What do we do? You could possibly warm this up because it feels like it's a hard plastic to me. It doesn't feel like a soft plastic. What I might do is even warm it up. I might get a heat gun because it's quite cold at the moment, and I might just see if I can get a Stanley knife and just try and cut through it that way. Obviously you've got to be careful with these tubes here. So I've got my tube connection there. I think one's like a flow in and one's flow out, and then obviously you've got the lead switch just here. Okay, so I just put my heat gun on it just to warm that up a tad. I'm just going to see if I can cut through this. See if it's going to make it any softer. So I can just cut through the top. This is definitely a little bit scary. That's definitely softer now. So yeah, you don't want it to do it in it's freezing cold. So we want to try and kind of rotate that a bit. So obviously what I don't want it to do is to suddenly split and crack. Maybe, and then maybe should go a little bit lower down. Oh, that didn't sound good, did it? As you heard then, there was like a nasty crack sound as I tried to cut through the nipple. Now, I couldn't tell what had happened at the time, but now watching the video back, I can see that the top of the nipple, it just splits as I squeeze it, and that's what makes the cracking sound. Maybe I could have carried on and squeezed and cut it all the way through, but like I said, I'm worried about the whole thing splitting all the way down. Now this is definitely not for the faint-hearted, so what I've done now is I've taken off this fuel connection here. All I do is push that bit there in, okay, and then I can lift it up. And then obviously there's some diesel's going to come out there, and I can just put this to one side. I've got a rag here because obviously some diesel started dripping out, so I've just got this clean rag, put that onto there, and then that's just going to put that out the way and just give me a bit more room to get to that little nipple there. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, not hard to get to, but it's just a bit awkward. So now I've got a brand new Stanley knife here, a brand new blade, and I'm just gonna see if I can just cut that off now. Should be a lot easier to do. Okay, let's give that a whirl. Obviously, if I'm wiggling around, it's because I can't really see what I'm doing. I can't watch the camera and do this. This plastic is definitely quite a hard plastic, so I'm not keen on snipping it through with some snips. I just feel like it might just crack the whole thing, and then you need to buy a whole new piece. It feels like, to me, it feels like I want to use a junior hacksaw on it. Now, just watching this video back, I'm not entirely sure that I've cut it in the best place. I think I probably could have just cut it on the top, so just above the rounded part of the nipple, just cut it off there with the knife. Because if I zoom in now, it looks like there is already a hole there. And then you also have a nice rounded edge, and to cut it through with a knife like this was actually pretty hard to do. Now, the reason I didn't do that is because all the videos I've seen previously said use a pair of side cutters and just snip off the nipple. And obviously I couldn't snip the nipple off on that rounded part. If I'd used the knife right from the start, I probably could have done it with no trouble at all. So that's my recommendation to you there. Let me know if you do that and how you get on. So according to my video timeline, I was trying to cut the top of this nipple off with the knife for around about 8 minutes. Until I got far enough in so I could actually poke the blade into the nipple. There it is, yeah, it's definitely in there. Yeah, see, it is quite brittle. See, that just snapped then. So I'd say you definitely want to be careful. I would say cutting it off with a pair of side cutters is not a good plan. I don't think that's a good idea at all. But, oh dear me, that was a tricky old bit of job. And you see I've got my light blazing on it there. I'll just move that out of the way. You can see it, but maybe you can see it a bit more clearly now. There it is. So yeah, I just want to make sure I haven't cracked it at all, because I definitely heard a bit of a click when I tried using the side cutters, and obviously we don't want that. If that was the case, then all I'd do is just use a rubber tube and push it further on down and clamp it on that way. Okay, so I was just with my blade and I was just trimming off the edge. It does cut quite easily, like that, and just trimming off a bit like that to make a bit of a chamfered edge so it doesn't damage the seal when we push the seal on, because that would be bad as well. Why that was so hard to cut through, I don't really know. It cuts quite easily now. So I've now finished cutting a little chamfer all the way around, and I'm happy with that. There's no sharp edges, so the O-ring inside the elbow should slip on there nice and easily and not get damaged. Now, because it made that click sound, I was a bit concerned that maybe I cracked it. So what I did in the end is I cleaned my bradawl off, and then I just popped it in the hole like that. And then I could just sort of lever on it, just pulling it, and that's going to pull the plastic apart. And I'm quite sure now there's no cracks in this, so I'm happy with that. But that is a little frightening. I mean, it's not the end of the world. You just have to buy a new cap if you mess it up. But this plastic is definitely quite hard to cut through. So anyway, I'm ready now to fit the elbow. So that's the next stage. There's a little bit of plastic there. See, that's a little bit just there. See, you don't want that getting in your fuel pump, do you? There we go. Now, watching the video back, I can see the little part which I've cut off. You can see it right there, and you can definitely see that there is a hole in the top of it. So all you need to do is to just trim that little bit of nipple off. You don't need to cut it off where I did. From the angle I'm looking at, I couldn't see that hole. And I would say you could probably do that with a Stanley knife blade. And then you could keep trimming it back until you're happy. Don't use the snips like other people mention. And bear in mind the internal diameter of the fuel tube is only 1.5 millimeters, so we do only need a small hole. Hindsight is a marvelous thing. So here's the elbow. I just ordered this and I'm just going to make this up before I go fitting it onto the van. So obviously it's much easier to put all the tube on this before I go fitting it onto the fuel tank. So that's the little elbow there. Now I bought this elbow off Amazon and it cost me £8. I'll leave a link in the description below. You've got the white clip to release it and all we need to do is to push it down onto the fitting. You can get these elbows as kits which are about £25 upwards, but I just bought it separate on its own. And I also just bought some tube which again is separate on its own. It's a meter, didn't need a meter, but again this is only £3, so I spent about a tenner in total, which I'm kind of happy with. That seems more realistic price. And then I've got a couple of spare Jubilee clips, so these are stainless steel ones, but I'm not going to use those. I'm going to use the ones that came with the TRUMA one, just because they're a little bit smaller and the space is a little bit tight down there, so I'm going to use these instead. So this is the tube that came with the TRUMA kit. So what's the thing about using this bit of tube? But it's very slightly bigger, so you can see that sort of slides in there a bit easier. And it's a little bit thinner diameter. This is a little bit tighter, so I'm going to use this bit of tube here, and I just need to cut it off about that kind of long, and that should be fine. So that's what I'm going to do. So we've got a pair of scissors, just going to snip that off. So that's good. Cut that across there, like that. And now I've got a big bit of spare tube if I need it. And I did actually use that spare bit of tube to connect onto the TRUMA water heater. Okay, so that's my bit of tube there now. So all I need to do then is to just push the other tube inside, like that. I'm going to push it up to the end. Now TRUMA says you don't want to have any gaps in between your fittings. So when I push that in, you can see I pushed that in quite a long way, and now it's just hitting up against there. So I can pull this back a little bit. So ideally, kind of thinking just about here. So that means that tube has to go in about that far. So I can push that in that far. And I think that's just about it there. So now when I push it in, there's a little gap there. So I'm just going to squeeze that together just a little bit further, push it on so there's nice and tight. So that's right up against the end there. Okay, so now I'm ready to put those fittings on and just clamp it up together. So these are pretty straightforward. Now it says you use a special tool. You don't need to use a special tool. Well, I didn't use a special tool. I'm just going to put them on here like this. I'm going to clamp it with a bit of space either side. Now you can see I've already tested this out on the other end, but all I did was I just used my side cutters. Now, these are stainless steel clamps. You're not going to cut through these stainless steel clamps, but I just put that on there and I just crimped it up a bit. I mean, that's basically what the pliers do. So I just squeeze it down like that, give it a good old squish, and then I just turned it around and did it from the other side like that, and squish it down a bit more. And you can see how the rubber is beginning to squeeze out either side. So I know that's a good tight fitting. I can just keep on going as far as I want. There we go. That's good and tight on there now. There's no chance that that is going to come off or leak. Yeah, you can see how that is squished down into the rubber there. So that's good. Then I can put the second one on. Going to keep them in the same orientation. So that, like that. Then this can go onto here. Okay, then we can just squeeze that up. And then that is ready to be fitted. Now I'm just going to put these, rather than straight up, I'm going to put them on a side like that, because I know there's plenty of space on this side here. So that's where I'm going to put that. And make sure that's towards the end, because this isn't very long. You can see that there. So I need to push that down, even maybe a tiny touch further, like that. Let me put that on there. Then I can just squeeze that up again, and it is ready to go. And fit it on the van. Again, just squeezing that up like that. That's obviously gripped it a little bit now because it's not turning so much. You can see it's still turning a little bit. That's why I'm going to grip this down a bit more. Make sure it's fully pushed on there. And squeeze that down good and tight.
and that's it. There, you can see that's tight. I can still just about turn it, but that definitely isn't coming off there. I mean, you can see that's not moving. So yeah, happy with that. So now I can go and fit this on the van. After I fit it on the van, I'm also going to do a bit of belt and braces and just put a little bit of conduit over the top. Now, this is split conduit. It's just going to protect the fuel tube when the fuel tube goes underneath the tank. But anyway, you get the idea anyway. So I'll do that in a minute, but I'm happy with that now. That's good and tight. So I'm going to go and fit it on the van.
What I'm going to do next, I'm just going to get a nice bit clean Vaseline. So there's a little bit just there. Lob it on my finger. That's nice and clean there, nice clean bit. And then I'm just going to wipe it onto that little pin there. Spigot, whatever you want to call it. Like that. And that's just going to help that fitting just slip on there and not damage that O-ring. I mean, I don't think it's going to damage anyway, but you know, you never know, do you? So there we go. That's a nice little wiping around there. Happy with that. Now I can get my tube and my elbow. Right, here's my elbow. Now, the question is, it's going to have to come down through the middle here. So that's just going to push on like that. That's a lot looser than I thought it was going to be. I thought I got the wrong size elbow then, because this just didn't. I've put it on and it's really, really loose. So I'm thinking, that ain't right. But I think the idea is you push it down past this little thing on the bottom here, that little bit there, you push it past that, and then that's going to hold it on. Because I was thinking, how's this going to grip? And now obviously that goes down past there. Kind of obvious, but you know, not so always obvious. And there you go. That's it. We are home, free and dry. And now I can just put the other one on. Back on here. Okay. Like that. So there's my other little piece there. That just snapped off. And now those are both pushed on there now. Now I've got to decide how to bring this fuel line out. What I wanted to point out to you here, so the tank here rests on this beam here. So it rests on there. You can see where it's gone rusty, where it sits on there. So it looks like they kind of sprayed the rest of the van, or whether they cut this part off, I don't know, but you can see this part here not protected at all under there. And in fact, everywhere the fuel tank is underneath here, it's not protected at all. But everywhere else is. It's a bit rubbish, isn't it? I guess it just protects it from chips. Oh well. And yet over there, it is protected. So I've got some Underseal stuff here, and I'm just going to spray over the bottom here. Now I bought this can from Whole Foods. Obviously you can get it from Euro car parts, or pretty much anywhere you'll find this car body Underseal. I'm going to spray also down there as well. See some more rust down here. So I'm going to do underneath there as well. Doing that beam. Oh, so it also sits here. So look, it sits on there. And it also rubs up on there. So I'm going to spray that bit there as well. So there we go. I just sprayed underneath here. Oh, that spray there. So I'm happy with that. I'll now put the conduit onto the tube, and I'll just put a little tie wrap, or zip tie, whatever you want to call it, onto the cable there, onto this electrical connection, and across here as well. And that's just going to hold it in place. And then I'll put the spray on the top there. So now it's going to jack the tank back up again now, and then spray some more protection underneath the van down there. So now I've finished spraying underneath the van. Hopefully you got enough protection on there. Now I can jack the tank up back into its position. Once the tank's back up in its position, check to make sure that the cables aren't crushed at all, and I can see these are absolutely fine. And if I look from the side, that's also good as well. I can now do up all 6 bolts nice and tight. So the tank is now fully refitted. Right, I hope that helped you out if you were looking to make that connection onto your fuel tank. If it has, of course, please give me that bit of feedback by clicking on the old thumbs up, click on that subscribe, and of course, share it with all the other van folks. Now, the next part of the video, I'm going to show you how I went about installing the pump, which is just underneath the van here, and making those connections, and the electrical connection, which runs underneath the floor here, over to the TRUMA boiler. Now I just zip tied the fuel line to this electrical cable to stop it from rattling around. I can now put my wastewater tank back into its position, put on the supporting brackets and then do up the nuts. And just refit my shower waste. When it comes to the fuel tube, all I've got to do is put a hole small enough or big enough through to put the tube through, and obviously a little rubber grommet on there to protect that. Or I could put the conduit up through the floor. That would just help protect the tube, which is what I think I probably might do. Just put the conduit on there, and then obviously I've got this electrical cable to run down through, so we either got to push this up through a hole or I've got to push this down through a hole, one of the two. So again, I need a fairly big hole to pop that through. Now I did wonder whether I could just cut the wire and make it shorter, because I'm going to have lots of meters spare. So I phoned TRUMA on 2 occasions just to double check, to ask them if I could cut the wire and shorten it. And on both occasions, 2 different people said, no, that will invalidate any warranty and you don't want to cut the wire. So just coil it up next to the heater. So I'm underneath the van here now, and obviously I've got my waste pipe, which gives me a good indication where that is. I think we're just going to come up here, this section here, of the underneath the van. Here's my fuel tube here. I've got my fuel pump connection. I'm going to show you where that goes. Going to go just on this stud just here. Here's the nut that was already on the stud, and all I did was just remove the nut. Tube's going to come up here and then go through here. So I'm going to have a look to see what's on the other side of here. Okay, so here's that section when I talk about bringing the fuel pipe through. So that's going to come through there. So there's nothing in the way here, so that's perfect. And I've also got to bring the electrical cable through. Okay, so let's just pop a hole in there, like that. And like I said, that's where that one comes up. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to put the other electrical connection through here, and that'll be good. Okay, so now I've got 2 holes in the van there, one for the fuel tube and one for the electrical connection for the pump. So here's my electrical cable and my fuel tube coming up through the van. Now I put rubber grommets into the holes and sealed the rubber grommets with Silkaflex. That's really just to protect the metalwork. Then I just secured the electrical cable and fuel tube with a zip tie with one of those fasteners on. So it means you can just screw that down and it holds it in place. They're really quite handy, and I use them on all my electrical connections on my electrical board. Just keeps everything nice and neat and tidy. So here's my fuel pump here. So I've got that with the fuel tube already connected, and I crimped these 2 on there, so that's done. I've got a bit of stainless steel bar here, which has got some holes already drilled in it, and that's going to go onto this beam here. And there's a stud already in the van, so it's actually part of the chassis here, just there, hard to see, but we're going to just bolt that onto there. Then I've got the rubber holder which holds the pump. The electrical connection of the pump goes upwards, so the pump has to be on an angle, so it's got to be put on an angle like that, and that's the outside. So now I can connect the electrical connection. So I'm just going to bring it down here, put it on there, so that's ready to go. Now I can put my electrical connection on, okay, and it's going up through the holes I made in the van with a little rubber grommet on it. I'm just going to clip this onto here. There it is, clip. That's it, that's that done. Finished. And now I can then seal this hole up here with some Sikaflex and just make sure that's fully sealed up. And then all I need to do is to just join my fuel tube from the van, the fuel tank, onto the pump just here. So that's about it. So that will then go around here like that. Then this is going to come around onto there. Let's just do that. Let's put that out of the way a minute. This is going to go up a tiny bit further, like that. That's going to come around here onto there like that, just making sure everything goes in position. This is from my sink. So the next thing I'm going to do is just to make up this tube here, put the connection onto there, and we're good to go. Okay, what I could do, I could just suck a bit of fuel through and see if fuel comes out of here. I mean, it's a bit scary because I don't want to be drinking diesel, but it would just prove that the diesel's coming through, and I could just tip it back again. I could just blow it out, couldn't I guess? Should we give that a go? Should we give that a bit of a suck and see if we get some diesel come down here? I'm not sure if that's a good idea or not. I think I'm going to give it a go anyway. Sort of prime that tube slightly.
What's the tube called again? What?
Oh. Oh. It's definitely connected to the diesel. I couldn't see it. I thought I'd be able to see it coming down the tube. You definitely can't see it coming down the tube. That's definitely good. And I hate diesel. Oh, Jesus. Why did I do that? Right, let's tuck this out. Otherwise, it's going to siphon the tank out. So I'm just tucking that up there. I need to try and... I'll have to just blow it back out again now. Ugh. Yeah, I can actually hear the bubbles in the tank, so that's good. Just tuck that in there or something, out the way. Oh, I can't believe I did that. I'm gonna have to sterilize my mouth now. Obviously, you can check that if you want to, but I don't recommend it. Getting diesel in your mouth is horrible. I hate diesel anyway because it stinks for ages. And now I've got a bit in my mouth. So now I've just got to make the final connection onto the diesel heater. So I'm just cutting the fuel tube to the correct length. Then I've just got to push the fuel tube into the rubber tube, making sure that there's no gap in between the fuel tube and the pump. So now I'm happy with the position of the tube. I can now do up the clamps the same way as I've done with all the others. Because there's a little bit of diesel on the tube, it means that it slides up inside the rubber tube quite easily. I can feel it hitting the pump, so I know it's in the correct position. So I can now slide on the other clamp and do that one up. And there we go. That's all the fuel connections made now under the van. Now I'm just going to spray a little bit of Underseal onto that stud, which is in the chassis. I can then do up the nut and clamp the pump into its final position. There we go, good nuts. And finally a little bit more spray just around that nut. What the hell, they belt braces and all that. So I've now added a little bit of conduit to the fuel tube as it goes up through the van. Now I'm just using a zip tie and just tying those cables together and strapping it back to that other bit of conduit which is already on the chassis of the van. That just keeps it all nice and tidy, stops it from rattling around, keeps it in its orientation. So yeah, happy with that. Now I'm just going to use a bit of Silkaflex and just seal all the way around the conduit and the rubber grommets, just making sure that everything is fully protected, metalwork and conduit and sleeves and everything else. Now the messy bit, just wiping it all around and making sure there's a good seal all the way around. So there we go, that's all the fuel connections made, just in case I connect it to the TRUMA unit now, or whatever diesel heater you have. So now I've got everything connected down below and in its correct position, so I'm just going to put some more Silkaflex on top of the grommet and around the conduit, just to seal that and to make sure it's no leaks or air comes up through it, and protect the metalwork. Now I can stick my insulation back down again. There we go, that's all done now. I still need to put a couple more holes on the other side for the 2 water dropout holes. Then I can put the floor down and finish off the TRUMA unit. Right, so that's about it then. Like I say, I do hope this video has helped you out. If it has, as usual, give me the old thumbs up, click on subscribe, share it with all of the fan folks, and your support is really appreciated. So bye for now, and I hope to see you in the next video.